So we'll start by getting a little background information from you. So can you tell us your age?
I'm 35.
And your living situation?
Currently living with my parents.
And how many people are in the residence just roughly?
There's roughly 4 of us.
4 people. And how social are you normally?
Quite social.
So would you consider yourself more of an extrovert or an introvert then? Or do you
Bit of both.
Bit of both, okay. And can we get a brief summary of your mental health history?
Briefly, it's not been the greatest.
So you've always sort of
I've had issues in the past.
Issues in the past, no problem. Overall, how has the lockdown affected your mental health?
I suppose in some ways I've been better than others, but it hasn't been grand. I've not been able to see anyone. It's not the same just talking to them. Actually seeing them face to face in an actual social setting is so much better and much better for your mental health than it is to just sit and talk to them over Zoom or FaceTime.
Yeah. And can you elaborate just on like how that made you feel?
Crap. That would be the best way. It made me feel... I feel actually more mentally and emotionally drained without seeing anyone than I ever did actually being around people.
Yeah.
Because there was just no interaction. So I just felt rubbish. Sometimes on the verge of tears, sometimes there was tears. But no, it was very bad to begin with.
Yeah. Okay, that brings us on to the next question. How did you find your mental health in the first month?
The first month, I handled it well for maybe the first couple of weeks. And then from there on out, it did decline rapidly. There was only so much social interaction I was getting at work, so it was just no good to me after the first fortnight. It was just like nothing with friends or any extended family.
Was it more, would you say it was more your mood or your motivation that you found declining first, or was it something else that declined first?
My motivation, that was a bit later in declining. My mood and positivity was the first thing to go. They were definitely the first thing to go. I was able to fake the motivation for a lot longer, but the mood and positivity was one of the first things to go.
Yeah. Did you feel you had to fake the motivation for anyone?
Mostly for myself, because I thought if I let it go, then I wouldn't even leave the room, let alone go to work. So I had to force myself to remain motivated.
So the next few questions will be relating to work. Can you tell us where exactly is it you work?
I am the store supervisor at Levenhall Village Store near Musselburgh.
So were you furloughed during?
No.
No, you were.
We haven't been closed. We've had adjusted times for the weekends, but during the week, which is the shifts that I do, we have been open normal hours.
Did you find that put more of a stress on your mental health, knowing that you had to stay open during a pandemic?
I felt a little bit put out that some people were getting to be furloughed and some people weren't. But I understood that we were doing it was mostly not. I ended up deciding it wasn't for me. That being furloughed would not have been for me because I probably would have gone absolutely mental if I'd been forced to be furloughed or quarantined or anything. I decided just to focus on the fact that we were remaining open for the local community, and we were the only shop other than a Tesco, and that's the supermarket that would be open for them during the pandemic. So I sort of comforted myself with that knowledge.
And did you feel precautions were taken when you first opened?
For the staff, yes, and mostly because I started ordering in I started ordering in a lot of the PPE stuff for the staff. Customers were a bit slower to cotton on, and in fact, some customers just weren't caring until it became mandatory to wear face masks and stuff in shops.
So, did you feel that that was a result of government guidelines not being strict enough when it comes to protect recruitment and what the public
If
were to do?
I think if we had been stricter and more stringent to begin with, yeah, I think it would have. I think we'd be more or less on our way to being in New Zealand right now, rather than us possibly having a double dip thanks to various peoples in Aberdeen, Manchester, and Glasgow.
Hmm. And did you feel there was a bit of confusion in relation to the
Yes,
rules with?
we had a bit of confusion in relation to guidelines and stuff because people weren't sure if they should have been listening to Holyrood or if they should have been listening to Westminster. And sadly, both seats of government were given conflicting information to begin with. I admit Holyrood decided to cede to following Westminster to begin with, but they should never have bothered. They should have just put it out Scottish guidelines immediately.
Mm,
And like I said, if we had probably been doing something stricter and more stringent, we'd be in New Zealand rather than possible double dip.
yeah. And how was the public's attitude towards you? Because I've heard reports from some people that they've been receiving abuse, threats.
I can't say I was ever abused.
Mhm.
Not. I've had people, I suppose, in a way, they were swearing at me because, well, after the mandatory face mask came in, requirement face coverings came in, I had a few people swearing at me because I was asking them to put a face mask on. I'm not allowed to enforce the law, but I'm able to ask a customer if they've got one, if they have, could they please put it on. And a few people aren't happy when you ask them. They do swear, they do shout, they get awfully huffy. And there are a few people who just don't believe it's a real thing and will try and convince you of their conspiracy theory ways.
Mhm. And how did you feel about being put in the situation where it was shop workers that had to effectively try and enforce the mask wearing whilst at the same time being told by the government that they weren't to enforce it?
It's it was like having a sort of bipolar episode, I suppose. Because one minute you're going, you've got to wear it, you've got to wear it. Next minute it's like, oh, I can't force you to wear it, but please put one on.
Yeah.
And it's like you were being very. It was you were trying. It was very bipolar in the fact you were being very forceful in getting people to wear it, but they were like, oh well, it's fine if you're not wearing it. Okay, you were being strong and meek all at once, and it was very, very weird, very difficult to pull off. Trying to be forceful while also at the exact same time being meek and allow them to walk over you.
And how did all of this that was going on in retail affect your mental health?
Oh, I mean, it's like I say, to begin with, the mood and the stuff was the first to go, and it's just gotten worse. I mean, now that I can actually see people, it's improved. But the fact that it's still retail, and some of the attitude and the stuff you get from people in when they're in the shop, it is diabolical, and it does take a toll. You do start to feel like crap by the end of your shift.
Yeah.
Sometimes, just even beginning of your shift, you start feeling like crap because they've just started piling it on from the moment you've opened the door.
And did you feel you were able to unwind in the same way you normally would if you came back from a stressful day at work?
No, because I wasn't able to go anywhere and see friends or anything. Up until recently, I've not seen any of my friends outside of FaceTiming or something like that. Normally, it was just stuck in the house, with the household also going stir crazy because they couldn't go out anywhere.
Yeah.
So there was no unwinding as such. It was just a stressful experience all round.
So it was definitely made worse by the fact that you couldn't see anyone.
Yeah.
Or speak
Yeah,
to anyone.
I mean, as much as I love my family, and I obviously do, you do want to go and see your friends and your extended family. But for the first X amount of weeks or months, you couldn't even go anywhere near them.
Mhm.
And like I said at the beginning, talking to them over Zoom or FaceTime or Skype, it's not the same as an actual face-to-face interaction.
Yeah. So just briefly going back to the retail, working in retail and then where you were potentially exposed
Yes.
to the virus and then having to come home,
Yes.
was there a concern on your part as to potentially bring something back?
Oh, yes. Well, considering my mother is in the high risk category, me coming home and interacting with her at all was quite worrying.
Yeah.
Um, it started off okay, I suppose, but it's now every day as soon as I get in the door. It's not even a good morning to anyone. I'm right into the bathroom for a shower before I interact with anyone,
Yeah.
just to make sure I'm not taking it around the house. Because yes, I'll sanitize my hands and things when I'm getting off the bus and before I get in the door, but it's on the clothes. It could be on the clothes. It could be on anything that I'm carrying. So I'd rather not chance it.
Mm-hmm. And did you think the guidelines were clear enough when it came to family of people that were at high risk?
The guidelines weren't clear to begin with. It was a confusing set of bullet points that no one could follow clearly.
Mm-hmm.
You had to do your best interpretation
Yeah.
of a mess. It was just tied knots, and you had to do your best to unravel what you could and follow it as best you can.
And just to clarify, did your mum fall into the shielding category or just the sort of the
No,
high
she was a shielded category. I had a choice. I could have shielded for. I could have gone for the first fortnight, furloughed and whatnot, but because that would have been me furloughing myself, I would have received no benefit whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I had a choice: earn nothing for half a month, or go to work.
So because of the farce that was the financial situation,
Mhm.
financial dealing of this, you felt that you effectively had to put someone that was shielding in more danger just to try and keep
Yeah.
yourself alive financially. At
For
least.
me to be financially stable, I had to risk the health and well-being of the people at home, because the only people who were guaranteed any furlough pay or any sort of sick pay while they were furloughing or whatever were the people who had to because they were high risk or shielding, or people who were being forced to work from home. Us retail workers who have high risk people at home, who were also shielding, we didn't get anything because it was through choice that we would be shielding and furloughing. It wouldn't be because we had to.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of the way to look at it is the same as going self-cert. You don't get anything for a self-cert week of sick pay. So that's what it was like, but for a fortnight rather than the week.
Yeah. And how is it that made you feel in regards to your mental health?
The choice of putting family at risk for money, it was disgusting. For me to be financially stable, I had to risk bringing it home to the family, and it made me feel like utter crap. My mum said she understood, and it was, as far as she's concerned, it was the right decision that I kept working. But it doesn't help the fact that at any point I can still bring it home.
Yeah. And that's certainly a situation that no one should have been put in. So, roughly when was it you felt your mental health starting to decline?
Oh. After the first, maybe three, like I say, after the first 2 weeks, I was okay. The first 2 weeks, I should say, I was okay. Afterwards, I could start feeling it getting worse. But there was nothing much that could be done. I couldn't go to see anybody. I could talk to people, but it's not the same thing. This is what I tried to get across to various others. It's all well and good talking to someone. It's just seeing them that's more beneficial. We're a communal tactile species. So talking to someone isn't the same as being around them. And that's the thing that I wish some people would understand, is even introverts, to some extent, still require social interaction.
Yeah.
A lot less of it, but they still require it because of how innate it is within our instinct as a species. And when we're not getting that social interaction, when we're not getting that ability to see face to face our friends and extended family, it does start taking a mental draining toll. And it will end up making you feel like utter crap, physically drained, emotionally drained, exhausted, and you've not done anything. You'll just be constantly tired and wanting to sleep, or just lock yourself away until your batteries are recharged. But because you're not getting into any interaction, your batteries don't recharge.
And did you feel you had any services that you could turn to, the places you could normally contact in relation to your mental health?
It was the same old deal. I didn't bother looking. That was my issue. I didn't bother checking to see if there was any. But all you kept getting was on radio and on some of the TV channels was, if this is badly affecting you, feel free to call NHS 24 or Samaritans, and that's all well and good, but it's not the best situation. Is that your only effects of getting through this sort of thing would be to phone one suicide charity.
And
That's it. And or NHS 24, who would probably put you through to some overworked, inundated counsellor.
yeah, I mean, because certainly both of those options would have been who were previously inundated with calls.
Exactly.
Now had people who didn't have mental health problems that were now experiencing it due to lockdown.
People who didn't realise they probably had any. Now during lockdown are like, oh, I actually have this, or this is now affecting me. So there's some people out there who probably just thought things were going swimmingly, and sometimes they have an off day, and they wouldn't think anything about it. But now, thanks to lockdown and the pandemic, they've realised that odd day when they've been feeling quite crap has turned out to be something slightly more severe, or it's developed into something more severe because they've not had the same routine. And because of a lack of an actual proper routine, their mental health has declined. At least that's my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. And as we start to ease out of lockdown, do you feel your mental health is gradually getting a little better?
No, because now I'm worried that we're going to end up double dipping. We've already seen evidence of this as lockdowns have been eased nationwide. We're up to 165 confirmed cases in the Bloom in Aberdeen. We're up to 165 confirmed cases. There are concerns that there'll be more cases through in Glasgow because of the footballers and their fans going out and not social distancing. So that's been an issue in Scotland anyway. I'm hoping no one dies, but I do hope people who have been awfully blasé about it get some sort of punishment. Because if that had been any of us and we were caught by the police, we'd have a fine and a criminal record. But it's one thing for us, one thing for them. They just get moaned at a little bit. And down south, Manchester and a lot of other places are now on lockdown. Preston is now on lockdown as well in the surrounding areas. So there are definitely blooms appearing in big population centres, and that's what worries me, is the fact that people are like, oh, we're now safe to go to here, and then they're all just gathering there, big congregations, and not caring a jot. And so that's got me more worried than it did previously. I thought we'd ease out and people would use their common sense. I stand corrected on every front. No one's used any common sense since the easing started.
So even though you're in a situation now where you could go out and see a few people while socially distancing, do you still feel...
I'm terrified.
Yeah.
I'm terrified. Every time I get asked to go and see someone, I'll do it. But I am absolutely terrified every single time. Because I might be taking the precautions necessary, and the people I meet up with might be taking the precautions necessary. Doesn't mean Tom and Jane are taking the necessary precautions. You know what I mean? Does it mean Bob, who's got his dog out for a walk, is taking precautions? Or half the folk on the buses who are sitting with no masks on, or sitting with their masks underneath their chin while they're on the buses when they're meant to be on their faces?
Yeah.
And half the folk who walk in and out of businesses that have got sanitizer there to be used and they're not using it, even if they're coming in or going out. That terrifies me. That worries me that people are just like, oh, the lockdown's eased, I can go back to normal. We won't be able to go back to normal now for a long time because of people like that.